passe l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. It's Chris O'Reilly joined by Alex Kulash for your latest episode. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing good, Chris.
We have an interview coming up later on in the show with Anja Borg to talk all about the Krisis in Kristiansand, and that's Crisis with a K, as they died and then came back to life. Suddenly a day later, a couple of weeks ago, we look back at all of that mess with Anja and a little bit at the Norwegian national team as well, very much in focus with the women playing their final tournament under Thorir Hergeiasen later this month, and then the men hosting the World Championship in January. But before we go into that, Alex, we're going to dedicate a little bit of the podcast to the Bundesliga, because there's been big matches in the last few weeks and in the last couple of days as well.
Yeah, I think two huge games. The Nordderby between Kiel and Flensburg was probably the biggest game of the weekend. Flensburg coming out on top against Kiel, 37-33 in Kiel. Dive into that. And also Melsungen continued to be real. That's seems to be the case. They absolutely destroyed Magdeburg 31-23 at home to stay top of the Bundesliga with 18 points. The top of the Bundesliga still has the dark horses on top. Melsungen on 18 points, Hannover Burgdorf right behind them on 16. And then is where we see the familiar faces of Flensburg, Füchse Berlin and Magdeburg filing in behind. But a team that we don't see near the top is Kiel, who sit down in 8th place after just a really, really quite poor start to the season overall. And let's just dive into Kiel, because I'm ready. And it just annoys me that Kiel should be doing better. Yeah. They have all the money, all the fans. They brought in Andy Wolf this year, and they've won 6 games and lost 4 in the Bundesliga this season. And it's just really, really, really not good enough. And that match against Flensburg was an absolute mess. It was a fun game. I wouldn't say it was the highest quality of handball I've watched. You're commentating on it. What was your general impression of the game?
A mess is a very good way to put it. A very comfortable lead after just 9-10 minutes, and it looked like it was going to be back to the good old days, the false dawns, which we've talked about over and over again. And to be honest, the team that looked to be in a bit of a mess was the away side in Flensburg. Kiel off to a flyer, Andy Wolf in goal, having a stormer those opening minutes, and it took Flensburg until the 10th minute to get their third goal of the game, and their first from the backcourt. Really hard to imagine that the game would turn out in the way that it did. And honestly, I found it quite hard to see how it turned so, like, it didn't turn so quickly as the first half progressed. It was very much a case of Flensburg not panicking too much. I think that was the message that they took away from the opening few minutes of the game as well. They, in those situations when you fall behind by 4, 5, 6 goals in the first 10 minutes, it's not a complete disaster, because a couple of goals quickly and then all of a sudden it doesn't look that bad, unless you're really, really punished in that opening quarter. And Flensburg managed to trust themselves a little bit and work their way back slowly but surely into the game until they took it into a draw at half-time. But for me, I think the crucial aspect of it for Kiel is they failed to react to when things were starting to go wrong, when the lead started to fall apart. And by react, I mean in terms of changing things up. They were like, okay, this worked for the first 10 minutes, and so we're going to stick with that, whether it be the players and the way they approached it, and they stuck with the same approach until it was too late in the final quarter, and they actually changed up things. And the key aspect of that was Domigo Dovniak, who was running on fumes by the end, but was brilliant, but should have been given a bit more of a break.
I think you hit it spot on there, and that's what I was going to say, that Kiel were outcoached, and we'll get into that again. Mm-hmm. But Kiel were absolutely outcoached by Nikolai Krickau, because Kiel did start well. They got out. The shots were going in. They were getting it to the wings. They had a lot of freedom in the backcourt. Went up 8-2. It was 9-3 essentially after 11 minutes. Flensburg were shook, but what Nikolai Krickau did was just turn the game into chaos. There was a 5-1, there was a 3-3 defense, there was a 3-2-1 defense, and that shook Kiel, because they essentially stopped playing as a team, and it was up to just individual players like Dovniak, like Johansson, to kind of get the ball and try to do something. And then what happened was just chaos. They dropped balls, jumps, and thrown away passes, and that's what Flensburg used to get back into the game. And Flensburg themselves weren't necessarily that good in that period. They thrived in the chaos, but their attack wasn't really succinct. It came down to just Lasse Møller is the weirdest handball player in the world. Because
how good he's the master of chaos.
He's the master of chaos. He can take a standing shot from any place on the court and it will go in, and somehow that's what kept happening. They just, whether it was from the right back, from 6 meters, from 10 meters, he'd have a bit of space and lash one in. And, that chaotic energy kind of allowed that kind of style for Lasse Møller, and it really worked. And they went into halftime level. Now is when you, if you're Jicha, you settle down, figure out what's going on here, how we're going to do it. And his solution was go 7-on-6. And 7-on-6 led to 4 empty net goals, and the game was done. That was it. And that's on Jicha completely. He didn't react to the chaos. His solution was it didn't work at all, because basically Flensburg kind of came out a little bit calmer in the second half. They started the chaos, but there's no need to really do something crazy in that moment. The game was level, and going with that 7-on-6 was absolute disaster, especially looking at how the Kiel players were playing towards the end of that second half. It wasn't safe. It wasn't controlled. So you have this mindset of the players acting a little bit crazy, and you introduce 7-on-6, which takes ultimate precision and control. Yeah. And it was just a terrible combination, and Flensburg were up 5 goals and the game was done.
How great was that and brave was that decision to bring on Benjamin Buric at halftime, when you had a goalkeeper in Kevin Muller who was on 32%, and most of that coming in the second quarter, and then to make that change at halftime, shocking, and it paid off immediately. 9 saves, 36%.
Yeah, and 4 of those saves were in that run as well. The first 5-10 minutes, he made some really, really good saves. And yeah, that's the beauty of having 2 absolutely fantastic goalkeepers. You can do that. You can change up the style, essentially, of goalkeeping, and it really worked. Again, Flensburg, as I said, were not that impressive. It felt like both teams, when a goal was scored, it was some sort of mistake or just a wide open, like players just waltzing through the defense. But again, that helps Flensburg because they're a fast team. They can live at that pace. They want to play at that pace, and Kiel aren't really that. No. They're not a team that runs, and again, Duvniak played most of the game, and the question I posed, what was it, a month ago now, when we had our last Bundesliga podcast, is what will happen when the centre players or the playmakers of the skipper and Bilic come back for Kiel. How is Jicha going to manage that?
Not very well.
And he's just kept playing Duvniak. And, Duvniak is a fantastic player. We love Duvniak. But he is 36 years old and has an insane number of miles on him. And he's not a playmaker who really controls a game. He's a playmaker who kind of thrives in chaos. And it felt like Emil Madsen and especially Johansson were kind of left alone to do what they can. There's so many times that Johansson got the ball and just made a decision of what he's going to do, whether it's go one-on-one, take a shot, pass it. It was all just chaotic and random. And you need some sort of playmaker to control that. And, that should be skipper O2.
Yeah.
And even when the skipper was on, it was so strange. He kept popping up in left back immediately. Yeah. They would do like an empty switch, and the skipper would be at left back, and you're like, what is the point of this? This is not his strength, and it's just a disaster. And Rasmus has been saying that defensively, Rasmus Boysen, that is, Kiel are a mess, and I trust him on that, as he was a defensive specialist. He knows defenses, but it just felt like everything was a mess this time around, and it was just mistakes in attack, mistakes in defense. They might put it together for a little bit, but then the mistakes would just be so glaring, and there's no control to this team, and it's like it's completely down to Jicha here. Like, how is he still in this?
How have we had this conversation?
Tell me how he's still in this. How are we still having this conversation? On that, actually, there was, I don't know if you saw that Gudjon Sigurdsson renewed his contract with Gummersbach, staying until 2027, which is great for him, great for Gummersbach. He's really built something quite positive there, like something that looks like it will keep growing in strength. But part of the rumor, it was on Handball Base on Instagram, so I'm not sure exactly the source of this, but apparently he was approached by both PSG and Kiel for the head coach jobs at those clubs. PSG, of course, with Raul Gonzalez moving on, and the tidbit about Kiel was interesting because it shows that they're looking. They know that maybe Jicha's days are numbered, but like, what's it gonna take for Jicha to get fired? Like, this is they're in 8th place. They spent $1 million on a goalkeeper this summer, if you believe those rumors. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think no matter what, it's going to be nothing's going to be decided in the near future. It's going to take a pure disaster to make it to force their hand, but it'll be it might be a farewell tour. Let's say the second half of this season. But we're gonna move on anyway to the chat with Anja. But you mentioned there last time we spoke about these teams, I asked you which would manage to hold on to their top 2 spots by the next time we chatted. Both Melsungen and Hanover both still there at the moment, and Melsungen coming up with a massive win, powered by the one and only Nebojša Simic.
Yeah, and that's the reason why they're still on top. Nebojša Simic has been by far the best goalkeeper in the Bundesliga. 105 saves, so he's averaging more than 10 saves a game at a pretty impressive 35.3% save rate. And by pretty impressive, I mean that's just really, really fantastic. He has been incredible, and that was the story of their win against Magdeburg. 19 saves, I think 3 double saves in the game, where the ball had gone out, rebounded, and he saved it again, and just shut down a Magdeburg team who only scored 23 goals. Really impressive from Melsungen. Melsungen have the 3rd best defense in the league so far. Obviously helps when you have Simic in such form. Again, Magdeburg not necessarily impressing. They also lost against Kiel in the cup during the week, losing a really close game there, and it just feels like right now for Magdeburg they get to the penalty spot or they have nothing. They play 1-on-1, they get penalties all the time. That's their attack, and there just seems to be not much beyond that. They've had to rely on Weber to be their star this season, which has been great to see. But he's also...
So Damgaard is next up.
Doesn't help. Damgaard is next up. And maybe it is just, the injuries of obviously Felix Klar and now Weber kind of dulling their offense. It's definitely a big reason. But, they have more than enough talent to make up for it. And they just don't seem to be able to get going on the offensive side.
On the positive note for Melsungen, just looking at the rest of their games in 2024 here, Alex, and 2 big ones against 2nd and 3rd place in the league, both at home though, in the coming weeks. And besides that, very much a bunch of winnable games. So there's a real chance they could end this year without losing another match and getting a victory at home against both of their closest rivals in Hanover and Flensburg, and streaking away by the World Championship break with a lead of 2, 3, 4 points heading into Christmas, which is not even extraordinary anymore. This team that we have mocked so ruthlessly over the years, not last season, of course, not last season, but they're really, really impressive, and it's so good to see the continued strides that both of these teams at the top have made. Not to say that anything is going to happen until the end of the season, but if you can get halfway there, then there's no reason to suggest that it's beyond them. And I just love to see it.
And the thing is, it feels like the challenging teams, the real favourites, none of them seem completely assured at the moment. None of them are really going on runs. It's all up and down, which makes it incredibly exciting, but a real opportunity for a team like Melsungen, who are, it's still, Hanover Bergdorf, they're fantastic. Renner Zerstins is wild. He's been so good. Justice Fischer has been so good, but they just don't have the squad.
That's
Melsungen
it, the squad. And what, it's so solid.
Yeah, and that's the way they're set up. They don't have any one player that stands above the rest, except for Simic, of course, in goals.
And quite literally Chris the Punch.
He absolutely stands above the rest, but he has been he's their top scorer with 45, but 45 is half of the goals that Rainer Zurschins has scored in the Champions so far. So it's a real team effort based on defense. and a real fantastic job from Robert Perrondo to turn this into a real team and not just a collection of fancy players. And they lost Ivan Martinovic last season. That they arguably lost their best player and one of the best players in the league, and have managed to stay at such a high level. So you have to give Perrondo lots of props there.
Yeah, and you were talking about their defensive record, and you look at the people in the squad like David Mandic, who is a left winger who can play in the centre of defence if he needs to. Alexandra Cavalcanti, Elvar Jonsson, just like throw out the left side and the centre of the defence, rock solid. Then you've got Kristapans and Kastaning, who are in their own way brilliant. And then you've got Shiposh, Moraes, Arnarsson, 3 line players who I think would, if they could just play the sport in defence, they probably would. So it's in every position. They've built a team that really, whatever he's selling them, they're buying.
Absolutely, there's no weaknesses there in that defence, and it's defenses win championships.
That's
so
it.
Let's see if that is true again.
All right, let's jump into our chat with Anja and hear about everything happening in Kristiansand and in Norwegian handball. So joining us to speak about the saga of Vipers Kristiansand over the last couple of weeks is Anja Borg. Anja, how are you?
I'm good. I'm busy with the Vipers, the national team, and the Norwegian league and everything, but it's good.
Good, and we'll cover the national team a little bit as well, as they've been busy over the last couple of weeks, both sides. But let's start. Take us back to what feels like a long time ago now. As we're recording on a Sunday afternoon, Vipers are about to face off against Ludwigsburg in a big Champions League game. But a few weeks ago, it seemed like we wouldn't be seeing Vipers in the Champions League or at all again. And you were down in Kristiansand as well to experience it all unfold.
I mean, I was actually down in Kristiansand this week as well. I was meeting up with Katrine Lunde and Silje Solberg Østhasse for some national team stuff, and we were talking about it. Feels like ages ago, but because it was so crazy, and for those two, the emotions were all over the place. But where to begin? We knew that Vipers needed money. They already had to rescue operations this year in February and the summer, but not in my wildest thoughts would I've thought about 25 million kroners. It's a lot of money. It all started actually, Monday, 14th of October. The Peter Gittmark, I feel like he's been the most famous person in Norway the past month, but the chairman of the board in the club, he gave us a heads up that you guys should be in Kristiansand tomorrow on Tuesday, because we're going to have a press conference. So we were there, or my colleague Harald was there, and he basically said that we need 25 million kroners by Friday. Or else the club's gonna be declared bankrupt. I didn't actually believe what I heard, but I had to go back and check. Okay, did he say 25? What is this? So it was unbelievable, and only a few days and everything. So, and then we go to the day after they had their quarterfinals against Storhamar in the Norwegian Championship, which they lost. And I talked to some of the girls after the game, and they were devastated, of course, about the loss, but mostly because they didn't know if they had a job on Monday. And especially for the girls with families. Silje Solberg Østhasse, she just moved back home with her family. Her husband has started working. Her daughter is in kindergarten. She loves her life. And suddenly you have to think about moving. to another country because you can't stay in Kristiansand. There's nothing else to do there. So it was a really, really, can't even explain the situation. It was really, really weird and very sad. Then the Friday came, and Peter Gittmark told everyone that they had not gotten all the money, but they wanted to buy time. So they wanted to keep on working that weekend. They had the Champions League game on Saturday, which they won. And they were glad that they won, but they didn't know if that was their last game ever for Vipers. And then the Sunday came. I think maybe I talked more to Peter Gittmark than I talked to my own family and friends that week. But Sunday morning, he was quite positive and optimistic, and because there were people that were interested in helping out, which some of them were fake, they found out. So they spent a lot of time researching these people, and they were not real people that were wanting to help out. So Sunday night, after the board meeting, Peter Gittmark came out and got like all the media. We were standing on the outside of the door and just waiting. And you can see tears in his eyes. And that's when everyone understood that, okay, this is not good. And it was tough standing there listening to this man. He was so sad. He was devastated, and said that Vipers had played their last game. And the board, or the majority of the board, they meant that it wasn't responsible to continuing running the club. So he said that Monday, this club is done. The day after. It was a weird situation, really weird standing there. I wanted to interview the players, but I understood that was going to be difficult because suddenly they were standing there without a club. But that night, this man, Morten Jørgensen, which is also a man that he's been in Vipers for many, many years as a former board member and everything, and sports coordinator. But he spoke up that night, said that this is nonsense. We cannot let this happen. So on Monday, only a few hours later, they were saved.
Back.
Those 24 hours, I can't even explain how it was being down there. It was, I hope I never experienced that again, because it was so weird.
Yeah, and seeing as it all turned so quickly in such a short time, that I think is what, I mean, the initial situation caught everyone off guard. The fact that it was published not by media through kind of secondhand information, but it was like published by Vipers themselves saying, you know, this is the end. That was on a Sunday evening, and then by the next day, everything had flipped on its head. I had seen a kind of a similar situation with a football club in Ireland where we're talking about the same kind of budgets. And it was only a couple of months ago where the directors said, yeah, we need this money all of a sudden by a Sunday, or the club is disappearing. And then by the Monday, everything was okay again. They had found a solution. And a lot of people in those situations were saying that, you know, this was part of a bit of a ploy to kind of to drive that money coming in, because they said, okay, if we don't make it a deadly serious situation and say that, you know, if the money doesn't come in by this day, there's no more club, to kind of force those who maybe have the money or might want to help out to invest then and to save the club. Is there a kind of feeling about that as well? Because it feels like there's a lot of mistrust floating around the running of this club right now, and for the last year or so as well.
Yeah, so the 25 million, or they put out the 25 million because that would save the club, it would pay the bills, and the club would get a new start. Then when we found out that the minimum to survive out the season is like 10 to 12 million, that they needed that. And of course, they wanted to just get people off the fence, because there's been a lot of people just sitting there and watching, because they're seeing like, oh, you have to sell Anja Borg. What is going on? You already had two times where you've been asking for money. So I'm really like curious to see how this affects their reputation, not only like out with the sponsors, but also with other players in the future. How are they going to sign the next star or the next player when they have that reputation that they have right now? The players that are there now that I've talked to, they really they trust this process, and they're calm, and they really believe that this is okay now, that the club is good. So hard to say, because 25 million is a lot of money. But on the other side, that would like make all their problems disappear if they got 25 million. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
What was the plan then that was presented to kind of keep this club going then, to try and gain back a bit of trust? Obviously they have money now to keep going, and like they've talked about sustainable solutions. Is there any clear sustainable solutions that have been mentioned?
I know that to like summer 2025, they're getting a new sponsor in, or they're switching out. Now they're also going through all of their sponsor deals, because there's some deals that were signed for many years ago that are maybe not that good. And they're just really trying to find like this maybe bigger sponsors that can go in with more money, because now they have a lot of like smaller sponsors. Morten Jørgensen, he's an interesting man, but he's calm. He really believes that this is going to work out, that they're going to get the money in, and that maybe the town or the city Kristiansand maybe just needed to wake up and give some more.
Yeah. And considering that this has come so close, and well, not so close to the club dying, but it actually did die for a few hours and then was resuscitated. It's not the first time that this has happened. Larvik is not that long ago an example of an incredibly successful Norwegian club, which fell basically to the bottom of the barrel before reviving in itself in a completely different way. Kolstad, almost before it began, had some issues as well in terms of finances. Has it kind of sparked any debate or discussion among Norwegian handball about, well, how are we able to drive top level handball in a more sustainable way?
Definitely, and they're not the only, or Kolstad and Vipers are not the only clubs that are really struggling. Bergen, they need like their main sponsor just backed out. They need money. Sandnes needs money. A lot of other teams really need money by the end of the year to keep themselves out of like the red category here. And it's really sad to see. Of course, Kolstad and Vipers, they haven't. It's a completely different club, different ambitions and everything. But why isn't this working out? Like Vipers, they've won the Champions League 3 times. How did this? Why doesn't anyone else want to like go in and give them money because of what they've achieved on the court? Yeah. I don't know. But people are like, really, this is a huge discussion. Like, how can the federation help? How can like the sponsors in Norway really go in? Because handball is a huge sport here, but people really love the national team, and the clubs are not, or the club handball is not as big as the national team here.
On the national team, it's been a busy couple of weeks on both the men's and women's side. You mentioned the Norwegian national team being announced earlier this week. It's the final hurrah, the final tournament for Thore Hergeisen as coach. What do you make of the squad that's been announced? Of course, there's a few new names coming in there, as I think we always expect to see in a first championship after the Olympics, but also still some of the old guard hanging on in there, which, if you consider the fairy tale story of finishing with the gold in Lille back in August, for some of the players, they want to keep going. I guess maybe, is it a case of trying to help with the transition to stick around with the squad a little bit longer, or what do you make of the players sticking in?
A lot of the players that still are sticking in the squad, they're not done. Yeah. Like Kari Bratseth Dale, Silje Solberg Østassel, Katrine Lunde, all of those players, they already got a kid, so they can just keep on going, and they're really motivated to just keep on going, and they are the best in their position, so of course they earn their spot in the squad. Yeah. What's I think is the most interesting part is Stina retiring, Veronica Christiansen, she's pregnant and out, and Nora Mørk is pregnant. Yeah. So these three have been the main trio in the Norwegian squad for so many years. Not only their speed and everything, but also just the assist role, the relationship with the line players and everything. So I'm really curious to see how they're gonna solve that. I'm not gonna call it a problem because we have a lot of good players, and we have Henny Reistad. But Henny Reistad, she cannot play 60 minutes every other day for 3 weeks during a championship. So kind of curious to see who Turid would put in the squad that can also be like a playmaker in the team, because Steen is out. So he brought in Anniken O'Baidley, which I think is really cool. She's been outstanding for Storhamar in the Norwegian League and the Champions League and the European League last year. And she has a really interesting story. She's 29, so she's not a young player anymore. She had her debut back in 2015, so 9 years ago. But she's had knee injuries and had to take a step back and only focus on playing with the club. But now she's back, and it's going to be really interesting to see her with all the other players. What I'm maybe the most curious about is how Stina, Vicky, as we call her, or Veronica Christiansen, and Nora Mørk, as I said, their relationship with the line players. In the tournament we had now for 2 weeks ago, Kari Bratseth Dale, she had her first goal after 55 minutes. That was the first pass to the line player. And that's not normal for Norway. Yeah. So it got better the 2 games after that, but it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to solve that one. Yeah. Is there any... So Anniken O'Baidley is a great example, I think, of a player who's probably had 4 injury issues, and also due to the names you mentioned being such consistent stars for the squad, who has had to wait for her turn. I think she also took the decision to not be part of the national team for quite a period as well. A few younger players coming into the squad as well. Does anyone particularly excite you among them? I think the Rushfeldt Deila twins are really fun to watch. This is going to be Live's first championship. It's going to be interesting to see them. They haven't played that much together the past years, but it's going to be fun to watch the both of them. Anne Cecilie Høgseth, the line player in Storhamar, she's back in the squad. She was in the Euros in 2022, I believe. Really good line player. So, and then we have Katrine Lunde and Silje Solberg, so we're good. Yeah, no, but it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I expected after August there would be a big hole in the squad left behind by the likes of the 3 backcourt players you mentioned already, but also Lunde and Herem on the wing. But they're sticking around. As you said, they're not done yet.
48 is the new 38, perhaps, when it comes to goalkeeping in LA 2028. On the men's side, then you were just in Stavanger covering that match as well between Norway and France in, what is really just a friendly tournament, almost Golden League-esque. But Jonas Villa decided, maybe a little bit through forced issues, but also to rotate the squad quite a bit. And there was a lot of new names on show. What did you make of their performances and of that second and third line of Norway's men's team?
Well, I would say there were only 7 from the Olympic squad in this one, and as you said, due to injuries and so on. But we had I call it a luxury problem on the right back for many years with Harald Rankin and Abelvik Rød and Kent Robin
Ivan Tangen.
Yes, of course, Kristoffer Rambo. And suddenly we had a problem because everyone was injured. So now, this time, he chose to let Patrick Helland Andersson, the 19-year-old in Elverum, play. So I was really excited to see him in the senior national team. I've seen him in Elverum and seen him with the junior national team as well. He was really good this summer and made the all-star team. But it was really fun to watch him play. He's used to playing with Tobias Grøndal and so on from his time in Elverum. But it was so cool to see how he was just so, I don't know, he didn't care. He just played his game, and it was so fun to watch. Then you have Thomas Solstad on the line. He's played a lot of national team games. But then you have Vetle Rønningen, which is basically like a defensive player, but he did his job well on the line as well. So it was fun to see the new guys and see how, and Mario Matic as well in the 7-on-6 play. Jonas Villa, he told us before and after that he wanted to try different players and wants to make it as difficult as possible for himself before selecting the squad for the Worlds. He wants to make it so difficult for him to choose the team. And I think that's really cool. Now, several players have tried this. They've been with the national team the past week, so they're not completely new if they get selected. So I'm excited to see. But Sander Sagosen, he's playing now, but he has to just keep on training and practicing and playing with Kolstad before January. But so he's good to go. But I'm excited to see who he's gonna pick for that squad. And then you have the goalie, André Bergson Christensen, who played incredible against France. He was so good.
Stunning. He's really kind of exploded onto the scene. He's been doing his thing in Portugal the last couple of years, put out some fantastic performances for Sporting already this season as well. So really fun to see him in action as well. And a very good competition for Torbjørn Bergerud. It seems like they're the number 1 and 2 right now, but there's a bit of depth at last in the goalkeeper position for Norway, which seems to be, if we think about the last 5, 6, 7 years, has always been a worry when you think about Norway as a top contender. Either it's like Bergerud or nothing, but it seems like that is a problem that's been solved now.
Yeah, definitely. And Jonas Villa, he said that Christian Sæverås has been playing really good in the Bundesliga as well. So it's not that he's out, but he just wanted to try Bergson Christensen. Yeah. So and he was really good. It was so fun to watch him yesterday. His first half was
phenomenal.
It was cool.
It's a big couple of years coming up for the Norwegian men in terms of home tournaments, and I guess that has a part to play in this build-up as well, with a home World Championship in January and the final weekend also being focused in Oslo. Was there any talk about kind of expectations for this team, who it seems the expectations have dropped away a little bit over the last couple of years, and then they do some things like the first few days at the Olympics in July and August this year that suggest, okay, maybe this team is among the contenders. But where do you think the team sits now in the pecking order coming up to the World Championship?
Difficult question. They haven't been in the semifinals for, it's been 6 championships without a semifinal. So I feel like our expectations are at the quarterfinals, and it depends on who's available for the squad. If Magnus Abelvikerud suddenly is available again, that would make a huge difference in the team. It's a hard one, but you saw what they did in 2020 when they played in Norway, the championship, European championship. They were really good. But I feel like we're at the quarterfinals now, and then everything, if they make it to a semifinal, I will be impressed.
It'll be a success.
And happy,
okay,
of course.
Yeah, that's a good. I think that's a good approach to take, given Norway's history recently. Okay, we'll leave it there. Anja, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Talk to you later. See ya.
Thank you to Anja for taking us through that. Vipers, of course, a story that keeps running. We're probably a little bit late on that, but maybe all the topics discussed will be relevant for a future potential collapse that happens in Norwegian handball, but hopefully not. Good to see that they will stick around. We'll, of course, have a lot more on the women's side coming into the European Championship. It's coming very soon, so we'll dive into that. Always a really good stage of the season to really dive into the women's side of the sport and kind of build from there. Got that coming for you, along with some morning clubs as always. And yeah, stick with us. Great time to join our Patreon with the European Championship coming up and the World Championship on the men's side in January, which will be exciting. We'll on our morning club this week, we'll also spoke about the latest round of international games. So if you want to hear that, go to patreon.com/handball hour. Join us for as little as €3 a month and enjoy the beautiful handball season that we're going through right now. On that, we'll say goodbye. Thank you from me and Chris, and see you next week.